Welcome to Flex and Guts by Moxie Welds. This show is all about weld tips and weld tools and welding EDC and welding projects, all kinds of different fun stuff that all goes along with it, and even special episodes dedicated to chicks of the trade. But today's episode, we are going to be going over some weld test tips, anything that's going to help calm those nerves, build your confidence, and make you ready for your next weld test. So let's get started. Tip number one, know what you're applying for. I know that sounds completely obvious, but the thing is I've seen a lot of people come in that just had no idea what they were gonna weld and be like, oh, well, I don't weld aluminum, and the whole job's based on welding aluminum or something, so just do your research. If they don't tell you, because I've been at some places that I had a test for that they don't tell you what it is you're testing for. They just kind of want to throw you in and see how you do, which is totally fine, but be ready. So you can do yourself a favor, research the company you're applying for. If they build aluminum tanks, if they build, transformer towers, if they build whatever it is that that's what that company does, that'll give you an idea. If it's aluminum tanks, okay, probably aluminum TIG, aluminum MIG, that'll give you an idea. This is something I should practice for. And that leads into tip number two. Tip number two, practice. If you have a welding machine in the backyard, practice on that. If you have to go to a friend's house or practice in your welding class, whatever it is, practice. And the more stuff you can practice, so say for instance that aluminum job, it's probably going to be aluminum MIG or TIG, but practice MIG welding steel or whatever else, because what if you get there and they want you to do more than just that one welding process? What if they want you to do more than just aluminum? What if they want you to do a series of things? They want you to be well-rounded. Practice, practice, practice. You're never gonna fail from practicing. You might fail while practicing, but that's why you practice, so that you can get better. You can build that confidence, work out the kinks in your skill and your techniques, so when you actually show up, you're gonna be a little more calm, a little more confident, because you already know, oh, I ran into this problem, or oh, I've tried this before, and you can work it out and adapt. Next, tip number three is going to be prep your gear. Don't rely on them to provide you with stuff. It just shows so much professionalism, initiative, that you show up prepared with all of your own gear. Even if you have to borrow gear, if you have to get some cheap gear at Harbor Freight, that's a bummer, but if it's just something to get you started until you get that welder job and you start making that welder pay, you can, upgrade your gear later. But make sure you show up with your own gear. Basic stuff, of course, your own welding hood, gloves, safety glasses, and I'm going to get into that in a bit. Having a wire wheel for your grinder, if you can get a grinder, but having a wire wheel for your angle grinder is huge if you're doing any kind of steel welding, really, because even if you get a little bit of spatter from MIG welding, just tap it with the wire wheel, you're taking the spatter off. And that's not something that's really crucial on a weld test, but say something like arc welding. If you're stick welding something and you're with your chipping hammer trying to take the slag off, that's fine, but you can increase your speed by just, and like with the grinder, in like 2 seconds you have that slag off. It's done, it's clean, your weld looks a lot better. But not just that, if you have to do a cover pass over that, you're cleaning it to a better degree so that you're giving yourself a better chance of putting a cleaner and more penetrated weld on your cover pass. Also, having a clamp. Can be any clamp. I have a couple here. You can have the long vice grips, 18R vice grips, especially if you weld like a little piece of angle iron on there. You can clamp on and grip to pipe, because usually your weld test stand is going to be mounted on the table. It's going to be probably about up here so that you can do your horizontal, your vertical, and your overhead. Well, when you have that, or even If you have a slide clamp, a C clamp, it really doesn't matter. Going back to if, you know, having one of these, having one of these in your tool bag is always going to save you. If you're clamping on to any kind of pipe or anything round, you can just pop that in there and boom, you can clamp right onto it. And this is why you want to clamp. I know this is short, I just kind of tacked this up to give an example, but if this is your welding stand, your weld test stand, I should say, you have yourself a clamp. You can rest your hand here and whip your gun over here, and you're like so much more comfortable, so much more comfortable doing your overhead, doing your vertical, but you have something you can rest your arms on. Look at how comfortable I am. Like, I could just weld like this. Like, I mean, you don't want to get all that sparks and slag on your sleeve there. It'll heat up and, you know, get a little burns, but you can be so much more comfortable just by adding one of these to your tool bag. Next is going to be Weld Settings. You can easily get download Miller Weld Settings. It's basic. I feel like it's not too specific. There's certain rods I've been wanting to, or that I needed to weld with, and I've been wanting to kind of look up the weld settings. A rod that maybe I don't really get to use very often, like a 309 stick welding rod electrode, and that didn't come up. That wasn't really an option for me to look up in the Miller Weld Settings. But it is a great app, especially for just basic stuff. If you're TIG welding, if you're, you know, MIG, whatever, you just kind of follow the little options in there and it gives you a very detailed information on your weld settings. Another little trick for weld settings, if you're doing any kind of wire feed, remember you can always lift up the side and right there you have all your weld settings information. There is nothing wrong with double checking this. Maybe it's a welder that you've never used before, that you're unfamiliar with, totally fine. Lift up the side, all your weld settings are right here. Make sure you match up whichever wire you're running, and it'll tell you your thickness of material. You can see, like, you know, the different wires you're running. If you're doing flex core, MIG, aluminum, spool gun, the different gases, and it'll tell you exactly where to say it. So say, for instance, we're doing 030, 18 gauge, 1D, and then you just go ahead and set that to 1 and D. Another tip is, of course, YouTube, such as channels as this, as well as weldingtipsandtricks.com. Oh my goodness, Jody, amazing. A total just teacher. He's a great teacher, and like the classroom instruction, just there's, you know, close up on his weld, all his little techniques and tips. He's amazing. Of course, there's a lot of other people that you can follow as well that have excellent tips, and I'll go ahead and give some other suggestions down below in the description. But YouTube is a great way to look at things from a different perspective or pick up on tips that you didn't know before. Last but not least, and definitely important, safety. Kind of going along with prepping your gear, safety goes right along with that. You show up with safety glasses, ear, hearing protection, your gloves, you're showing, and even a welding jacket. Do not weld in a short sleeve. Don't weld in short sleeve. But you showing up in safety gear and your PPE shows that you're, one, professional, and two, that you're not a liability to the company. And that is something that they definitely look at when they're doing their weld tests. Is this guy being safe? Is he handling his grinder safely? Is he wearing, you know, his eye protection, his hearing protection when he's working? You know, because they want to make sure that you already have those good habits so that they can just bring you right onto the team and not have to worry about you. That's about it for today, guys, but if you guys want to share your own little tips that help you with your weld tests, when you're prepping, when you're actually doing the test, please share in the comments below. This is a community and we like to help each other out. If you have any suggestions or anything you'd like me to add on maybe another episode or a similar episode to this one, let me know in the comments, and I'll be super happy to go ahead and incorporate your ideas as well and give you guys shout outs and all the credit for the tips that you're sharing with the YouTube community. So I appreciate that, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Remember, be MOXILICIOUS.